We live in interesting times. Today's stories. A tension-filled conversation led to a sexist remark from Ontario Premier. Vaccine shipment update in Ottawa. 2 passengers are fined after falsifying COVID-19 test results. Chicago digs out after a massive snowfall. NATO holds post-Trump talks as Afghanistan decision looms. Canada backyard ice rinks make a big comeback during the pandemic. In sports, NBA to host one-day All-Star event in Atlanta. And the Phoenix Mercury acquire Kia Nurse from the New York Liberty. Hello everyone, you're watching Eagle News Canada. I'm Kat Joy reporting in from Calgary, Alberta, bringing you stories from across the globe.
This is not the news Canadians wanted to hear. After months of a second round of public health restrictions in a year, things are just beginning to ease up. You know, many provinces are loosening the rules. Then, as the week ended, the country's top doctor released her latest predictions of how the pandemic might go in the future. Dr. Theresa Tam concluded her biggest concern is the emergence of the more contagious COVID variants. She says even if we keep our current restrictions in place, they are not sufficient enough to control the rapid growth of this modified virus. How dire is her prediction? Tam says if current restrictions remain in place, the country could see 10,000 new cases a day by April. And she says if restrictions are eased, oh my goodness, that could jump as high as 20,000 a day. Bottom line, according to Dr. Tam, and these are her words, longer-range modeling, including variants of concern, shows that current public health measures will not be sufficient to control rapid growth, and a resurgence is forecast. Tam reiterated the need for people to strictly adhere to individual precautions. She says that means having the fewest interactions with the fewest people for the shortest period of time at the greatest distance while wearing the best-fitting mask. Tam joined the weekly conference call Thursday night with Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. That's the one he holds with the premiers, and she had some advice for provincial governments that are considering lifting some restrictions. She told them if they ease anything at all, it had better be slow and with a lot of surveillance testing. She says the recent outbreak in Newfoundland and Labrador shows just how quickly the variants can work their way through the population. That province has reported dozens of new cases in the past 2 weeks. Many of the new infections were in people under the age of 40. In Edmonton, Canada, Thomas I. Likeness, Eagle News. We live in interesting times.
A tension-filled conversation led to a sexist remark from an Ontario Premier. Eagle News correspondent Joshua Santillana with the details.
Premier Doug Ford gave what NDP leader Andrew Horwath called a sexist remark during the question period of the Ontario Legislature at Queen's Park Wednesday. The sexist remark came up during a tension-filled exchange about Ford's decision to reopen the province. The NDP leader was putting into question if the Premier is actually listening to his own medical experts. Take a listen.
When will the Premier actually start listening to the hospitals, to the doctors, to his own experts, and prevent this province from going into yet another third wave and lockdown?
To which the Premier gave this reply.
Rather than sitting there and constantly criticizing from day one, putting confusion with the public about paid sick days, rather than sending inaccurate information out to the public and hurting the public, why don't you come and join us to support the people of Ontario for once, rather than just sit there and criticize and criticize. You know, it's like listening to nails on a chalkboard, listening to you.
Horwath called the Premier's comments as completely inappropriate in her media interview after the question period. Take a listen. I think every woman in Ontario deserves an apology for Mr. Ford's comments. There's no way that the Premier of Ontario should be using those kinds of sexist terms. Leader of the Liberal Party, Stephen Del Duca, took to his Twitter to express his disappointment. Misogynist rhetoric like this has no place in the Ontario legislature. For it to be hurled by a Premier is unthinkable. Premier Ford should apologize immediately. We expect better. Mark Schreiner, leader of the Green Party, expressed his condemnation of the Premier's remarks via his Twitter. This kind of misogynist attack is unacceptable. The Premier should unequivocally apologize for his comment. The Premier's office made a statement to a media network saying that the Premier condemns any and all forms of misogyny and sexism. However, it is of significance that the statement did not include any form of apology for what the Premier said. Horwath took to her Twitter to express her message to all women. My message to women: don't let anyone try to tell you you don't belong at Queen's Park. I'm going to continue making positive proposals to give people the help and hope they need to get through this pandemic. If Mr. Ford doesn't like hearing my positive proposals, too bad. In Toronto, Justine Joshua Santillana, Eagle News. We live in interesting times.
In Ottawa, Eagle News correspondent Andre Lajoie gives us an update on vaccine shipments.
A delivery schedule of vaccine was scheduled by Pfizer for the next 6 weeks to meet the end of March deadline. The company plans to ship 475,000 doses next week and then 444,600 per week next month, according to the federal government vaccines distribution tracker. So far, Moderna has delivered 500,000 doses, and the company will deliver a reduced shipment of 168,000 doses next week. Specific delivery dates are still being negotiated with Moderna for the remaining of 1.3 million doses they are committed to delivering by the end of March, but they are expected to arrive in 2 shipments, says Major General Danny Fortin. Furthermore, according to the Major General Fortin, the territory will have enough doses from Moderna next to delivery to vaccinate 75% of the adults by the end of March. The territory have already administered vaccines to 32.9% of their adult population. If both companies, Pfizer and Moderna, follow through with the delivery on schedule, that means Canada would have more than enough doses to fully vaccinate the country's entire population by September, projecting Canada to fully vaccinate 14.5 million people by the end of June and 42 million by the end of September. From Ottawa, Canada, this is Andre Lajoie. We live in an interesting time.
Transport Canada has fined 2 passengers for falsifying their COVID-19 test results. Eagle News correspondent Vanessa Condi with a report.
2 passengers have been fined for falsifying COVID-19 test results, according to the Government of Canada's statement. Transport Canada has fined 2 passengers $7,000 and $10,000 respectively, after a comprehensive investigation for presenting a false or misleading COVID-19 test and for making a false declaration about their health status. The statement also mentions that both cases, the individuals knowingly boarded a flight to Canada from Mexico on January 23, 2021, after having tested positive for COVID-19 only a few days before their flight. As of January, travellers that are returning to Canada by air are required to provide a negative COVID-19 test that is performed within 72 hours prior to their arrival. From February 15, travellers returning to Canada are also required to provide a negative test results going through the land borders. They also need to undergo a mandatory 14-day quarantine period. Not only Canada, many other countries have also implemented strict guidelines in regards to international travel to stop the further spread of COVID-19. In Victoria, BC, Vanessa Condi, Eagle News, we live in interesting times.
Millions were left without power as a winter storm gripped southern and central United States Tuesday with record low temperatures in ill-prepared areas and a tornado claiming 3 lives.
I've been on here for about 25 minutes just on my lunch break. I don't need to go anywhere today, but I imagined trying to dig out tomorrow would be pretty icy.
More than 20 storm-related deaths have been registered so far, including traffic accidents in Texas, Kentucky, and Missouri, according to local media. In hardest-hit Texas, where freezing conditions prompt utility companies to implement rotating blackouts. A woman and a young girl died from carbon monoxide poisoning after using a car to generate heat, according to NBC News.
Feels like 14 inches. Yeah, I was hearing like what happened in Texas and a lot of people there without power, so it's pretty devastating, but I'm imagining it'll probably take us like 3 days to dig out of this.
In Houston on Monday, a homeless man was killed possibly from exposure, according to the Harris County Sheriff's Department, and the city's police chief said another man had been found dead after potential exposure to low temperatures. A man in Louisiana died when he hit his head after slipping on ice, and a 10-year-old Tennessee boy died after he and his 6-year-old sister fell through ice into a pond on Sunday.
I think Mother Nature is bipolar. I really do. She's off her meds, and I think we're paying for it because last year wasn't that bad. But this year, it's really, it's really hitting us hard. I think we got spoiled. That's what the problem is.
President Joe Biden on Tuesday vowed to provide additional emergency resources for those affected by the historic storm. He also thanked road workers, highway patrol officers, and first responders who are taking swift actions in horrific conditions to save lives, according to a White House statement. The winter storm spawned at least 4 tornadoes, according to the Atlanta-based weather.com, including one in coastal North Carolina late Monday that killed at least 3 people and injured 10 more.
It's too much. It reminds me of the last time we had our large storm, and I believe it was in 2011 or 2012, I'm not sure. But either way it goes, I'm just over it. I'm ready to go to Florida. I'm tired of this. I'm getting too old for this.
NATO defense ministers met Wednesday for their first talk since U.S. President Joe Biden took office, looking to reboot ties after 4 years of tension under Donald Trump. Key on the agenda at the 2-day virtual conference is the future of NATO's 9,600-strong support mission in Afghanistan after Trump sidelined allies and struck a deal with the Taliban to pull out troops. Biden's administration is reviewing whether to stick to a looming May 1st deadline to withdraw or risk a bloody backlash from the insurgents by staying. New U.S. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin is not set to make any firm announcements when the topic is discussed Thursday, but will seek input from allies to help Biden make his call. Other NATO members insist they are willing to remain in Afghanistan if Washington stays too. Central to the mission's fate is the question of whether the U.S. determines that the Taliban has broken promises in the peace deal by ratcheting up attacks and failing to make headway in talks with the Kabul government. The insurgents have launched a string of offensives threatening at least 2 provincial capitals and warned NATO ministers not to seek a continuation of occupation and war by staying. Cramp Karen Bauer said peace negotiations between the Taliban and government have not yet been concluded in such a way that the troops can now leave Afghanistan.
We went into Afghanistan together, NATO allies, partners and the United States after 9/11. We have made decisions on adjusting our presence together, and we will also make the decision when the time is right to leave together. We have the upcoming summit, we have the NATO 2030, we have a new US administration, and all of that together really provides a unique opportunity after some difficult years for all of us on both sides of the Atlantic to have a substantive, forward-looking agenda. Adapting to the future requires sustained investment in our defense. Today, we discussed progress toward fairer burden sharing. 2021 will be the 7th consecutive year of increased defense spending by European allies and Canada. 9 allies are expected to spend 2% of GDP on defense, compared to only 3 in 2014.
More Canadians than ever this year are embracing an old winter tradition in this country, the backyard ice rink, as public health authorities have restricted public gatherings and other social activities. Felix Rayum, who built his first ice rink this year in Montreal, says, "We are in our family bubble. We respect the rules and we're having fun at the same time."
Comme je disais, c'est j'ai un de mes amis qui m'a donné l'idée et l'inspiration, mais à la base, c'était aussi pour se donner quelque chose à faire cet hiver avec le confinement puis toutes les activités qui sont interdites, qui sont proscrites. Alors, ça nous permettait d'avoir une activité avec les filles pour sortir dehors, prendre l'air un petit peu, bouger, dans le respect du confinement puis des règles entourant la situation qu'on a en ce moment.
Fait que, à un moment donné, on en a parlé ensemble, tout le monde, puis il est venu vraiment comme ça, de façon spontanée. Là. Fait qu'en temps normal, je pense pas qu'on aurait pensé à ça, en effet.
Puis évidemment, avec le contexte de la COVID, ça change la donne aussi parce que, bon, on veut pas aller dans un endroit où c'est trop bondé de monde, comme ça peut l'être parfois au parc, dans une patinoire publique. Donc ici, ben, on est dans notre bulle familiale, on respecte les règles, puis on s'amuse en même temps.
Coming up in sports, NBA to host one-day All-Star event in Atlanta, and the Phoenix Mercury acquire Kia Nurse from New York Liberty. Eagle News Canada continues after this.
Sa mga panahong napakahirap humanap ng trabaho at pagkakakitaan, paano pa kaya ang may mga kapansanan?
Wala, hindi po ako natanggap. Sinasabing puno, may mga trabahador na. Ang pangarap ko noon ay maka-experience ng trabaho kahit na mahirap.
Tunghayan natin ang kwento ng pag-asa at paninindigan ng mga kababayan nating DAP o Differently Abled Persons.
Ako, napakarami pong hirap para sa isang DEP na makihalubili sa mga tao. Hindi po kayo katanggap-tanggap, kaya ako po ay nagtiyaga.
Ibabahagi rin namin sa inyo kung paano sila niyakap ng embrace tungo sa pag-unlad.
Ang embrace din ay katuwang ng mga DAP sa pagkakaroon ng higit pang maunlad na kasanayan.
Nakatulong po sa akin, ako po ay nakapagtrabaho ng tuloy-tuloy.
Ang una tinuro sa akin ay paggawa ng milk tea.
Sa Embrace Cafe po, talagang ini-embrace natin yung mga differently abled persons. Kung ano po yung benepisyo na dapat maibigay.
Pagmamahal sa pagtatrabaho, nandoon, nararamdaman mo. Kaya mamahalin mo rin sila eh.
Ako po, si Robin Padilla, at ito po ang unlad. Kagapay sa hanap buhay.
Welcome back. You're watching Eagle News Canada. I'm Kat Joy from Calgary, Alberta. In sports, the NBA will host a one-day All-Star event in Atlanta. Eagle News correspondent Zarita Sese has more.
In a time where a normal routine is a thing of the past, the NBA is trying their best to bring back a sense of normalcy that we've all been longing for, even if it's just a fraction of what we're used to. The NBA and its Players Association have announced that they will be moving forward with a one-day All-Star event on March 7th in Atlanta. They're looking to support historically Black universities and also provide COVID relief for the community, donating $2.5 million for funds and resources. Instead of fans seeing their favorite events spread out over 3 days, the NBA has put together a jam-packed night, starting with the skills competition and the three-point contest prior to the actual All-Star game. And of course, it wouldn't be the NBA All-Star without the slam dunk competition, which is set to happen during halftime. The All-Star starters and captains were announced this week, and to no one's surprise, LeBron James of the Los Angeles Lakers was one of the top vote-getters yet again, despite the feedback he had for this event. Alongside LeBron, Kevin Durant of the Brooklyn Nets was also named captain, and for the rest of the players, Bradley Beal, Joel Embiid, Steph Curry, and Luka Doncic were also named starters. As to who the rest of the participants will be, that has yet to be announced. But the NBA and its Players Association have ensured everybody that they're putting the participants' health and safety as priority, and thus creating a mini bubble. The extra COVID protocols that they've put in place include private flights to Atlanta, one hotel for all players and coaches, along with access to rapid testing. Even though it's not what basketball fans are used to, none of us can turn down the opportunity to see the best of the best take the court for some friendly competition. From Toronto, Canada, Zarita Sese, Eagle News, we live in interesting times.
The Phoenix Mercury acquired point guard Kia Nurse from the New York Liberty last Wednesday. The 24-year-old Hamilton, Ontario native opens up on the opportunity of playing for the Mercury. Eagle News correspondent Tenny Samagi with the details.
After spending her first 2 seasons with the New York Liberty, Kia Nurse will now head to the Phoenix Mercury. Nurse, who is the sister of NHL defenseman Darnell Nurse and the niece of NFL legendary quarterback Donovan McNabb, hopes that in Phoenix, her game will grow with the help of WNBA superstars Skylar Diggins-Smith, Brittany Griner, and her idol and fellow UConn Huskies alum, Diana Taurasi.
I'm extremely excited to play alongside DT. Obviously, I've looked up to her and watched her play. She's the GOAT for a reason. And I'm excited to really learn. I think there's a lot of intricacies of the game that you can only get from the experience and being who she is, both on and off the court. So I think there's a lot that I can learn there as well. So I'm pumped for that.
We'll have more stories and highlights of the WNBA here on Eagle News. In New York, Tenny Sumagi, Eagle News, we live in interesting times.
We end our program today with some music. Here is Homer Concepcion from Vancouver. He sings an original song called Your Light.
You're the one who I call, the one I pray to. You are my all. When I am down, nowhere to go. All my trials, all my problems, you know. 'Cause I believe in you. If only the world knew all the wonders you are. You took me out of the darkness and into the light, and you held me with your might. I'm proud to be your chosen in these last days, to know your truth, your ways. Now I want to share the love that all the world could see your light. I'm unworthy, Lord, to call before your name. Though I've made mistakes, your love remains the same. I long for your words, your wisdom is so great. I will spread your news before it's too late. 'Cause I believe in you, if only the world knew all the wonders you are. You took me out of the darkness and into the light, and you have me with your might. I'm proud to be your chosen in these last days, to know your truth and ways. Now I want to share the love that you showed me, so that all the world could see your light. You took me out of the darkness and into the light, and you held me with your might. I'm proud to be your chosen in these last days, to know your truth, your ways. Now I want to share the love that you showed me, so that all the world could see your light. You took me out of the darkness and into the light, and you held me with your might. I'm proud to be your chosen in these last days, to know your truth, your ways. Now I want to share the love that you showed me, so that all the world could see your light, so that all the world could see your light, so that all the world could see your light.
That's today's Eagle News Canada. Join us again next week as we bring stories that matter to you. Visit our website at eaglenews.net and eaglenewslive.com. Follow us on Twitter at twitter.com/eaglenews and on Facebook at facebook.com/eaglenews. Thank you for watching. I'm Kat Joy. We live in interesting times.